Thank you. You may be seated.
All right, good morning. Good morning to our church family that's tuning in on live streaming. At least we hope you're tuning in. We hope that it's working. There was some question this morning because the company was doing some upgrading that it might interfere, but last I heard it should be okay. So we trust that you're able to view in with us this morning. I don't know how much of the congregation you can see. I can't remember on the live streaming aspect there, but we are a sick church right now. Not many people here. But we've been praying for the folks that are at home. We trust again that you will be praying for those who are under the weather. We've all heard a story about a dad trying to get their son to jump from a balcony or some high rock or on a tree, and then he'll catch him, okay? And the purpose of that is what? So your kid learns to trust you, okay? Well, I had that experience just recently with my granddaughter, okay, Charlotte, and Charlotte's 4, and we were at my mom's, and there's a cabin back there, and she was up in the loft, and she wanted to go up there, so she climbed up there all by herself. The problem is when it comes time to get down. I mean, I can almost reach the top of the loft. I mean, I'm just really close there, can't quite get it, but so I just tell her, look, just jump, and I'll catch you. She starts to lean forward, and of course she won't jump. Really, all she has to do is just scoot to the edge, and I could probably grab her. I just can't quite reach her. But she still wouldn't do it. So, if it would have been my son, I'd have just yanked him down off of there, okay? Just to show you that I don't have any special privileges with any of my kids or grandkids. I reached up and I grabbed her and yanked her down off of there, and I had a hold of her. Of course, her eyes are about bugged right out of her head. But I told her, look, Papa would never do anything to hurt you. I wouldn't do that. I wasn't going to drop you. And she was fine. But the interesting thing is, as I thought about that, and I'm thinking back over this past year of 2020, and you know what? We often say we trust the Lord. But I think a lot of us are just like me getting Charlotte down out of that loft. God has to yank us in order for us to trust Him. I mean, we talk about trusting the Lord all the time, and I'm not downplaying anything that has taken place this year, but I can't help but wonder, as we look back on 2020, have we really trusted the Lord this year? You know, it's easy to speak those words. I think everything that has taken place this year has kind of caught us off guard a little bit. I think it's really shaken us a little bit spiritually in the fact that we don't trust the Lord as much as we think that we do. Take your Bibles, if you will, and turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17 this morning. 1 Samuel chapter 17. I chose a very familiar passage to deal with this topic of trusting the Lord, because I want you to be able to quickly draw back your thoughts on David and Goliath so we can understand the importance of trusting the Lord. Okay? It's one thing to say, it's another thing to do it. Proverbs 3:5 comes to mind. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. Now, as I thought on that verse and I thought on about trusting the Lord, how can I prepare to trust the Lord? Is there such a thing? Is it possible for you to prepare to trust the Lord? I don't think there is. It's something that we have to purpose to do. I'm going to do this, this, and this to prepare so I'm ready to trust the Lord. No, it's something that you have to purpose to do. Look at 1 Samuel 17 and verse number 37. We're just going to read this verse, and then we'll look at some other things in the story. But verse 37 says, David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, He will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. David was somebody who purposed to trust the Lord. And I don't know what 2021 is going to bring, folks. I have no idea, okay? One thing we do know is this: anything can happen. Who'd have ever thought we'd be in this situation come 2020? We saw things that would never take place, at least we thought would never take place in our lifetime, and yet, boom, it has happened. So what makes us think in 2021 that everything will be back to normal? Because who knows what might happen. But I want us to be prepared, okay, to trust the Lord in 2021. And we got to do that by purposing in our heart to trust the Lord. Look, purpose to trust the Lord is something that has to be your choice. Okay? I can't choose it for you. Somebody else can't choose it for you. You can't choose it for me. It has to be your own personal choice. Now think about this. There are various options. When you talk about a choice, that means you have more than one option, right? Otherwise, there would be no choice. More than one option. Think about Joshua when he said, choose you this day whom you will serve. Okay? So you have a choice what? To choose the God of Israel or the God of others, okay? That is your choice. Think about Elijah when he said, how long halt ye between two opinions? If God is God, follow him, and if it's Baal, follow him. There's a choice. Now, I'm assuming if you're looking at those choices, you are thinking on them, right? What am I going to do? What choice is best for me? Okay? Every choice you have, and every day you make choices. I have yet to find somebody who's made a choice that purposely would not benefit them. Okay? Every one of us makes a choice to benefit us or our family or whatever, but not just to not benefit us, okay? So the decision you're making is a voluntary decision. You're not coerced. Joshua didn't get up there and say to the children of Israel, look, you had better choose to serve God. Elijah didn't tell the children of Israel, you had better choose to follow God. Now that's what they wanted, but they did not force them. They left the choice up to them. It was a voluntary decision. Just as purposing to trust the Lord, it has to be your decision. It has to be a voluntary decision. Here's the other thing about this is that there will be a visible change. Again, think about this. Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That was Joshua's decision. Now, do you think for a moment that Joshua's family didn't look different than other families? If he chose to serve God, then there has to be a difference. Okay? Has to be. Because not everybody chose to serve God. The same with Elijah. When Elijah said, how long halt you between two opinions? I guarantee you the life of Elijah was far different than everybody else when he decided he was going to follow the Lord. If you are going to purpose to trust the Lord, there's going to be a difference. A visible difference in your life. Okay? Now, let's look at some things here as we look and think about that choice aspect number one. Okay? Do you purpose to choose to trust the Lord? Now, again, I'm not downplaying anything that has taken place this year. But I'm just talking about in my own life. Every pastor that, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone this year with other pastors, all trying to figure out what we're going to do. How are we going to handle the situation? What about this? What about that? And I don't have all the answers, obviously. They didn't have all the answers, obviously. But I'm telling you, one of the things that kept coming back to is, I wonder if we haven't chosen to not trust the Lord. Now again, God gives us doctors, right? You go to a doctor, I go to the doctor. You have to have surgery. You're trusting the doctor's going to do a good job of surgery. But ultimately, who are you trusting? I hope you're trusting the Lord. Yes, God has given that doctor a special ability to operate and do things, but you know what? He's just a man. Are there any perfect men? Look, just because we're all not feeling well, okay, and because half the church is not here, doesn't mean you can't answer, okay? Doctors make mistakes. And yes, you're counting on him to do the best that he possibly can. But ultimately, our trust has to be in the Lord. Our trust has to be in the Lord. The Lord will help him not to make a mistake because he is a man and he is vulnerable to make mistakes. So ultimately, even though God uses people, really our ultimate goal ought to be the fact that we're trusting the Lord. And again, as I look back and I'm thinking, we're getting opinions, we're listening to media, we're listening to this, we're listening to that, but I wonder if we're not trusting the Lord. I hate to say it, I really don't know that we've done a good job of that this past year as we look back on things. Okay? Notice this other thing about trusting the Lord. Again, it requires a commitment on our part. When you're choosing to do something, Okay? It's not just a haphazard guess. You didn't flip a coin. At least I hope you didn't flip a coin whether or not you're going to choose to serve God or follow God. I hope you didn't flip a coin. But you voluntarily chose that. And when you do that, you're making a commitment. You're making a commitment to follow after your choice. Okay, David made it a point to choose to follow God. Look at Look at 1 Samuel. Look at verse number 16, or chapter 16, excuse me. Chapter 16. And let's look at beginning verse number 10, read down through verse number 12. And here's the thing when I say about David. David just didn't choose to trust the Lord when he was an older person. He chose to trust the Lord when he was a young person. Look what it says in verse number 10. Again, Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel, and Samuel said unto Jesse, The Lord hath not chosen these. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all thy children? And he said, There remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and with all of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, Arise, anoint him, for this is he. When they brought the people, the sons of, Jesse, they brought his sons forward, David was not to be found. But what do we know about David? In verse number 7, God saw David was a man after his own heart. David had already purposed as a young boy to trust the Lord. And even though others may not have, David, throughout his life, we see that, again, not a perfect man, but one who trusted the Lord in all circumstances. Look, when you make a choice to trust the Lord, you're going to follow after that. At least if you're committed. You're committed. I hope you don't just make a choice and think, well, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, oh, well, I'm not out anything. Well, there's no commitment there. Okay, there's no commitment there, and it won't work out, by the way. Look at verse number 29 of chapter 17, and we see here that David wants to further his choice. Again, advance his choice, to grow his choice, which, again, I would like to think that all of us would do. David says here in verse number 29, and David says, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? Now, David understood that. David wasn't saying that for his benefit. He was saying that for what? For everyone else's benefit. David trusted the Lord, and what he's trying to do there is to get others to trust the Lord as well. And again, a person who purposes to trust the Lord is going to do just that. If we get a handful of people in this church who decide that they want to trust the Lord, you know what? They're going to try to be influencing others to do the same thing, trusting the Lord. And again, it's not going to work by you and I just making a statement from our mouth, hey, you just need to trust the Lord. You just need to trust the Lord. Well, it's easy to say that, but are you trusting the Lord? The year 2020, as you look back, have you trusted the Lord this whole year? And I'm telling you, many of us, I think, have not done that. And again, I'm not saying anything about being foolish, folks. I'm not talking about that. Doing foolish things and say, well, God let me down. Okay, no, we're not talking about that. But you know what? We need to trust the Lord. Verses 38 and 39 of chapter 17, we see that you need to be faithful to your choice. Again, remember when I said a minute ago, you're voluntarily choosing. That means you're making a commitment. If you're not making a commitment, if you're just flipping a coin, you're putting forth no effort, and you will not be faithful. It will not be long before you're out in left field somewhere. Notice what he says here in verses 38 and 39. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put on a helmet of brass and upon his head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off from him. Think about that for one moment here. This was a test, believe it or not, for David. Whether or not he was going to trust the Lord. Because if you and I were going off to battle, yes, we're trusting the Lord, but you know what? We're going to arm ourselves, aren't we? If this is going to be available to me, yeah, you bet I'm going to put that on. But David didn't do that. David wholeheartedly and faithfully trusted the Lord, and when he had an opportunity to maybe increase his chances, He said, nope. I don't know about that armor, but he did know about God. He had trusted God his entire life, and he would continue to do so. Now, here's the thing we want to look at, and this is the majority, I suppose, of our thoughts here this morning is this, okay? If you're going to purpose to choose to trust the Lord, okay, you got to realize you're going to be challenged. You're going to be tested. And that's really what this story about David and Goliath here is really about. David who trusted the Lord, but you know what? We'll see how much he trusts the Lord. 2020, maybe it was a year for us that God gave us to see whether or not we were really going to trust the Lord. And I certainly hope so as we go forward in 2021 that we look back and we say, you know what? Maybe I have failed in certain aspects of trusting the Lord. It caught me off guard. I didn't realize how important it was for me to trust the Lord. And you know what? We're looking at some of these challenges that David had. Look at verse number 30. And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. Notice the pressure, the peer pressure that David was under. Here he is, a group of warriors who are all afraid. And I'm not saying, again, none of us wouldn't be afraid because it is Goliath after all. But David says, you know what? Is there not a cause? And he turns to every man there, and he's trying to convince them. He's the only one. How many times have you and I caved under peer pressure? And by the way, peer pressure doesn't have to mean you're the only one. For many of us, it doesn't take that. It doesn't take a whole bunch of convincing or a whole bunch of peer pressure for us to cave in on something, does it? You might be in a group of 5 people, and one person says, well, I think we ought to do this. And another says, you're right, we ought to. And then, you know what? You agree with everybody. You agree with everybody. We get so frustrated with our teenagers because they follow the crowd. Why did you do that? Well, everybody else was doing that. And what? If everybody else is jumping off a cliff, are you going to do it as well? Okay? Look, they caved because of peer pressure. But what about us as adults? How many times do we cave under peer pressure? Pressure of family. Or family might say this or they might think that, and we cave in. What about our job? Fear of losing a job or something, and we cave in. Peer pressure is not something that just happens to young people. It happens to everybody. Then we see in verse 34 and verse 36, just the opposite of peer pressure. What if you're the only one present? What if there's no one else around? You're all alone. Look what it says in verse 34 through 36. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of the mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by the beard and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. Now I know, okay, that David was a good shepherd boy, truly tending to the flock of the sheep. But I got to be honest with you, okay? If I was watching over the sheep today, and I had to worry about wolves and bears and lions and things, you know what? I have a gun, okay? I'm not too concerned, okay? I'm pretty sure the gun I have is going to put down whatever's attacking my sheep. David didn't have that. He had a sling. He had a sling and some stones, but here it says he just grabbed him by his bare hands and he killed it. Now here's my point is this. There's nobody else around. David's out there with just the sheep. A lion and a bear, they come and they steal a sheep. Okay, look, do I really want to risk my life and track down that bear or that lion? Nobody else is going to know. You know, things happen like that. You know, it's no big deal. But you know what? David was a man who trusted the Lord. He trusted the Lord. He had a job to do. And even though there was no one else around, you know what? He was going to fulfill his responsibility to the best of his ability. And you know what? He trusted the Lord. Now, again, that's extremely important because there's going to come times, that we just saw earlier, okay, that he won't be alone. The pressure will come. Look, if you can do that which is right when no one else is around, you stand a better chance of doing that which is right when everybody else is around. And, of course, we see over in verse number 4, the challenge, again, was peer pressure. The challenge was being alone. The challenge was problems, and David had a huge problem, didn't he? It was Goliath. A bear is one thing. A lion is one thing. Now, again, those are ferocious animals. Okay, you hear all the time on the news how that people are feeding the bears, and then a bear attacks them. Look, you can't outrun a bear. You can't outfight a bear, okay? I don't care how big and tough you may be, okay? But here is Goliath. He's not a bear, and he's not a lion, but he's got weapons as well. But look at verse number 4, just so we get a picture of David's problem here, okay? And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Again, David, anywhere between 9 and 10 feet tall. Now, I don't know if you've ever had the privilege to stand near somebody who's 7 feet tall. Okay? Now, Josh is 6'6" plus or whatever, but you stand him next to a 7-footer, man, he's short. No matter how you look at it, there's just something standing next to a 7-footer, and you're like, my goodness, I thought I was tall. You're extreme. Can you imagine somebody 2 to 3 feet bigger than a 7-footer? I'm telling you, that's just intimidating, no matter how you look at it. Look at verse 33. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Not only was Goliath a giant of a man, he was an experienced warrior. Okay? This wasn't his first battle. All right? He was ready. He was an accomplished warrior, and people feared him, and rightfully so. Look at verses 41 through 44. And the Philistine came out and drew near unto David, and the man that had, and the man that have the, where am I at here? And the man that have the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. Now notice verse 43. And the Philistine said unto who? Peter, you're sitting in the front. Who did Goliath say it to? David. Thank you very much, okay? Yes, you can answer. It's okay. Look, my point is this. As we're reading this, it's one thing to be looking at Goliath across the valley there. It's another thing for Goliath coming out and getting in your face. Now notice what Goliath says to David. He said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David and his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Now, again, I don't know about you, but if this guy is talking to me, and you gotta remember, I'm creaking my neck to see him, and he's threatened to feed me to the birds of the air, maybe I could just be a little bit scared. Maybe I could just be a little bit intimidated. But you know what? David trusted the Lord. It did not matter how big the problem was. And again, whatever your thoughts are about what has happened in 2020, it doesn't matter how big the problem is. If you trust the Lord is in control of all things. It's so easy, again, for us, when things are going well, or if there's a minor issue, just trust the Lord. But what if it's a big problem? And Goliath was a big problem. Now here's the thing about trusting the Lord. We talked about being challenged. The question is this: will you persevere? When you purpose to trust the Lord, will you stick with it? Notice what it says in verse number 40. And he took the staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in the shepherd's bag, which he had, even a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Now, there's all kinds of speculation out there why David has the 5 stones, okay? It doesn't really matter why he has the 5 stones, but let me give you something that maybe you haven't heard before, and I'm not saying it's right because maybe you haven't heard it before. But you know what? Maybe David took 5 stones because maybe he would have missed. It didn't mean that he didn't trust the Lord any less. He's just prepared. He's prepared. Now again, we assume that David wasn't going to miss, and I understand that, but you know what? Maybe that's why he took the 5. And maybe it was for Goliath's brothers. Maybe it was just for anything else that might happen. See, David was going to stick to it. He was going to trust the Lord no matter what. And I think the 5 stones bears that out. So as we say we trust the Lord and we look back on 2020 and wonder, well, maybe I really didn't trust the Lord. But I don't want to go through that again next year. I want to be prepared for whatever comes about. You know what? And 5 stones says to me that David was prepared for whatever else came his way. Look, we might not be able to prepare for trusting the Lord, but we can purpose and practice trusting the Lord. Is that your purpose? Will you practice that? Will you persevere in that? I don't know what's going to happen the rest of this year, and as we look back to or look forward to 2021, maybe we ought to recall the hymn. I think it's called "Trusting Jesus," but the chorus is this: "Trusting as the moments fly, trusting as the days go by, trusting Him whate'er befall, trusting Jesus, that is all." Easy thing for us to say, another thing for us to do. What a great hymn that is. What a great chorus that is. Trusting Him whate'er befall. Trusting Jesus, that is all. And again, as we look forward to 2021, I trust that we won't be caught off guard again like we were, like at least I believe we were in 2020, that we will always trust the Lord no matter what. I'm going to go ahead and stand. We'll have a word of prayer. And again, let me just remind the folks again, as we have a word of prayer here in just a second, that right after the service, again, Todd's going to come and share something quickly from what he has talked with the other deacons and trustees, okay? Let's pray. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Let me just quickly ask this. We're not going to have an invitation necessarily, but I just want you to, between you and God, I'm not even asking you to raise a hand today, just between you and God. As you think back to 2020, have you really trusted the Lord this year? Has the virus, has the election, has other things really caused us not to trust the Lord this year? We've been listening to media, been listening to other people, all kinds of things, and really probably have gotten away from trusting the Lord. And you say, you know what? I don't want that to happen again. I don't want that to happen for me. I don't want that to happen as a church, to get caught off guard again. We just want to make it, but you have to purpose to trust the Lord. You say, you know what, Pastor, I want to purpose to trust the Lord. You're not raising your hand, but is that what you choose to do today? Do you choose to purpose to trust the Lord in 2021? Heavenly Father, again, we do thank you for the opportunity we had to be in your house today. Thank you for the folks that were able to come, and I know there are many that were not able to be here today. We do pray for our church family as they are at home and recovering. Lord, I pray again for the folks that are here, those who've already been through the viruses and other sicknesses, maybe others that will still go through it. We just pray again, Lord, that we would trust you through this process, knowing, Lord, that you're in control of all things. And Father, I do pray that you would help us to purpose in our hearts for the year 2021, Lord, not to get caught off guard, but to know that we are going to trust you no matter what happens. And Lord, maybe we needed 2020 to wake us up to realize that anything can happen, but that you are in control of all things. Lord, be with us throughout this day. May everything we do bring honor and glory to you. We ask in